Okay, I'm at 3668 Castlewood Lane in Cincinnati, Ohio. Doing a sanitary lateral inspection for the purchase of a home. We're looking for any structural issues mainly, but we'll take note of anything we feel is concerning to the buyer. Our access is this Y clean out here. It's PVC, but it goes down into cast iron there at the floor. So I expect there to be cast iron under the floor, and based off the age of the home, most likely it'll be clay once we exit the home. And so as you can see, there's the cast iron, and cast iron isn't a bad material, but as you can see, it does rust, and so there is some, common things with cast iron that you want to pay attention to, which this is good actually. It looks like it's been replaced here. I don't know if they added something down here, but it does look like there is a section of PVC that's been installed and a rubber fern coat to connect it. Again, going back to cast iron, the only problem with cast iron is, as you can see, it starts to kind of you get a valley or a in the center of the pipe where the water line, or where the water runs, excuse me. And with the roughness of the pipe in general, it's a lot more common to have what they call soft clogs in cast iron pipe because of how rough it is. And that can be like excess toilet paper, but mainly they're caused by flushing things you shouldn't. Paper towels, wet wipes, things that don't break down. Toilet paper is designed to disintegrate in the water. If you ever want to test that, you can just run it underneath the sink, water in your sink, and do the same with a wet wipe, and you'll see that obviously one will disintegrate and the other one will not. And so you just want to avoid those things, and if you do, the cast iron will be fine. It's just hard to distinguish how thin or thick the pipe walls are from the inside like that, unless you have physical holes and stuff like that. It's usually pretty common, but pretty obvious. Just you can't really see, you can't tell how thin or thick the pipe wall is to begin with. But at any rate, we're getting ready to drop here, and a lot of times you'll see that it's kind of a connection there on the top that's coming into it. And so there's a clean out in the floor, most likely under carpet, and a lot of times this can prevent the camera from continuing because this thing has a weird S-bend in it right as it goes into the clay. But hopefully we'll be able to, because of that turn, a lot of times it's hard to get the camera through, but must be lucky today because that actually went through. Now hopefully that won't cause any issues as far as getting any further. Okay, that was just the haze. I thought that was a hole there for a minute, but it's just the discoloration of the pipe. There's some buildup like right here. It's kind of weird how all this buildup here. I'll have to locate that, but it looks like it's this is actually concrete pipe, and so what I have to do here, because of all this buildup, I may end up having to kind of flush this stuff out. But concrete pipe is also it's a good material, but it's also rough, and so sometimes you'll have a small buildup like this. And I don't know how long the house has been vacant, but this could be some residue from construction. I'm going to run some water here in this stationary tub, or actually I'm going to take a look and see if there's another spot that I can run water from down here, a restroom or something, just because it'll kind of make it easier for you to hear if I am coming from if I'm in here running the water next to it, sometimes can obscure what I'm saying, or my voice. Yeah, it looks like they just must have recently turned the water back on. It's spitting and there's some air in the lines. And so we're going to run some water here. Actually, I'm going to pause the video for a minute and just kind of let it make its way down, because it's probably going to take a minute for the water to get out there. Okay, you can see all the water coming through. And like I said, I think maybe the water was turned off. And so maybe we can flush out some of this area. And it was just dried up stuff. And so hopefully we can, it looks like the water's getting through here fairly well, but it will also help as we push out. Should help me get my camera out, because the old concrete lines again are very rough on the bottom, so sometimes they can make it tough to push all the way out. The good news is that it has concrete versus clay. Only because of the very large tree that's in the front yard. A lot of times concrete tends to do a little bit better job. The way it's assembled tends to do a little bit better job of keeping the roots out. But I guess we will see. Because of that turn there in the roughness of the pipe. This all looks pretty good so far. The water level is not a big deal. This camera lens is only about a half inch off the bottom of the pipe, so. Looks like we are dropping into the main, and so that's very, very good news. We were able to make it all the way out to the main. And again, I'm going to keep this water running. Probably going to go flush the toilet a couple times, and we're going to see if we can make sure we get this line flushed out, making sure that we'll try to get the line flushed out and see if, you know, that way we can tell whether or not that line whether or not that stuff in the line was just there because the water was turned off and the house was vacant, so it just, whatever was down through there last, it just kind of dried out. So we'll keep some water running, try to soften that up, and we'll see how much luck we have clearing that out. See that the line itself looked really good structurally. I didn't see any major structural issues. So I'll try to keep that camera lens. But you can see how dirty the water looks, and that kind of makes me think that it's just because the water was turned off to the house, and so. The clearer the water gets, maybe the more of this stuff is getting flushed out. And so obviously you can see how on the concrete, you'll see how the aggregate or the stone is kind of exposed, so you can tell it's concrete. But it's done a very good job of keeping the roots out. That is an enormous tree out front. And so I would say if that was a clay line, you would really have you'd probably have a very large amount of root intrusion. So we'll get back up here to this area where we saw some of the buildup, and we'll check it out. Hopefully it goes right around in here. But you can see stuff, like I just want to try to break it all loose. So sometimes what it is, wherever that water stopped last time, like you see that little bit there, and so we want to try to kind of scrape it loose, and because what will happen is, like I said, you'll have something where, you know, something got dumped down. That last flush of water that went down, it only carried it so far, and then it sat dry for a long period of time. So we just want to try to get as much of that out of there as we can, and as we soften it up with the water, hopefully we'll get it to go ahead and take off. You can kind of see a little bit there where I had come up against a chunk like that. So we'll just try to get that moving. Must be stuck on the other side, but it should release as because I'm actually running 2 fixtures. Let's see here, see if I got that peeled up and moving. I can see it too. It's right there. I almost see it off in the distance there, and it's kind of making the water build up just enough over that. You can see that big chunk. I'm not sure what that is. Probably what was on the bottom of the pipe up further. It needs to soften up. So I'm going to pull back. We'll take a look at that, and then what I'll try to do is, I think I'm going to shut the water off in a minute after I take a look at all this and see if that's what broke loose right in here. Yeah, see, there's another chunk. So I believe this was just debris that had built up and dried out, and now that we're actually running water through, we're breaking it all up because it was right there. Yeah. And so it just hit there. It didn't go any further because there's just a little bit of clay, and then it goes into concrete. And that's kind of what we got loose. So that's good news. It means that there's really nothing to worry about. And so it's like structurally the line's in great shape. So I'm going to stop here because I'm right up against that. And then I'm going to shut the water off, let it drain down, and we'll take another look at that in a second. Okay, you can kind of see as the water recedes. What I may do too is we'll pull back, take a look at that area. You can see it's a pretty big chunk of stuff, but all it took was the water flowing through there. Yeah, kind of grease and who knows what else. It's probably, but just a few chunks, and it was all coming from right here at the beginning. And so it just sat there, it dried out, and now it's we got it moving. And so what I'll try to do here is a good way of watching this stuff is a lot of times it takes yeah, these are like chunks of grease and stuff that have just built up from it sitting. And so not a big deal, should come out with a load of laundry or something like that, but we're going to actually watch this. I'm going to flush the toilet real quick and we'll see if that shoves it down there a little bit. Okay, it should show up any second, and hopefully that'll start moving this stuff along a little bit. Yeah, see, that's what we're looking for. It's just a little bit of movement to let, you know, just kind of make you feel good about the fact that it, you know, will actually move on down the pipe a little bit with some flushing or a load of laundry, a long shower, probably a mixture of those things. And the more water that goes through there on a regular basis, I think that'll break up because it's obviously loose. It just so So we'll check that again. I'll go flush it again, see if we can get that to move. While we're doing this, I also want to make note that there is a water-saving toilet in the basement. Sometimes that will, sometimes there's water-saving toilets. If you use the number 1 flush or the low flush, that it's not, doesn't really get a whole lot of stuff out. Sometimes if it's, especially females, if you're using a lot of toilet paper, it doesn't carry it down the pipe as long as you want. And like I mentioned with the cast iron earlier, the mixture of those two can sometimes cause backups. So just go ahead and use the number 2 flush all the time, the larger flush, because you need that extra water. And these older pipes, these low flow toilets, they don't use a lot of water, and then you have something like this where it doesn't carry, it doesn't carry a lot of the stuff down the pipe, and then you're dealing with, something like this where, it looks like this stuff is softening up, and so I'm breaking it up in pieces, and, we're in good shape. There's nothing to worry about. Structurally, the line is in great shape, so not really a concern, but we'll go ahead and flush the toilet one more time. See if we can get this to move. It's already moved a few feet, and we'll watch it move a little bit further, and you'll know that the more you use the plumbing, the more this will just take off on down the line. But with the limited amount of water that comes through on a low flow toilet, and if the one upstairs is similar, you want to do the same thing. But see, the more water that we get through here, it's softening the stuff up. And so it just needs regular use. That's all that stuff was. It was just dried out. It hadn't been taken very far. And so this stuff was just dried out. And so, yeah, the line looks great. I didn't see any defects at all, which is wonderful. For a minute there, I thought because of that buildup that maybe there was something going on there. But you can see we've already pushed it 10 feet or so right there at that connection. But yeah, no root intrusion. All the connections look really good. Really a great line, especially for this age of house. The combination of the two, and see, that is a chunk of grease too. I'm surprised that hasn't moved. But you need a good shower. I just knocked it down. Need a good shower with a bunch of hot water. That'll help carry that down. Load a couple loads of laundry. We'll flush this line out. But yeah, no structural issues at all. Just make sure you're only using toilet paper, no wet wipes, and flush the toilet normally. They made these new low flow toilets, but didn't take into consideration that a lot of these houses are really old. This line looks wonderful, but because it's rough, you might need a little more water to carry the stuff through. Kind of that's what we want to make sure of. But again, the line is in great shape. I didn't see any structural defects. All we found was a little bit of dried material in the line, and like I mentioned before, with the with all the indications that we had of the the water spitting and stuff, and we turned the faucet on. This water's been turned off for a while, and so there hasn't been anything going through it. And once we got some water going through it and kind of moved that stuff around, it broke loose and it's starting to soften up. So it just needs regular use. The individual fixtures will be tested when we individual fixtures will be tested. They're getting ready to do the home inspection here starting at about 1 o'clock. And so we'll get a little bit more flow and stuff out of the line there to But yeah, the line structurally looks wonderful, man. So there's no physical defects at all. So that's going to end the inspection at 3668 Castlewood Lane in Cincinnati, Ohio.